It's just interrupted me laughing because we're, of course, both in the midst of a diet. Welcome back, guys, to the Beyond Condition podcast, the voice of bodybuilding. And today's voice is a returning guest. Nicole joins me from across the pond. Welcome back.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited. We were just talking before the recording started about the last time we were on here, our faces were much fuller and now we have nothing left. So I hope everyone enjoys the death faces from both of us.
Yeah, it's certainly like you said, it's a sign that you're, in the diet, but also it's a cathartic just getting off on those things like that because it's like, you're in the midst of the hunger, the fatigue, and all of the things that come from a prep, and it's like unless you get off on this stuff, then you might need to find something else to potentially pursue.
Yeah, no, I mean it's as you know, when you don't get like dopamine from anywhere else, it's the little things, a new vein, your cheek gets sunken in a little bit more. Like that's what keeps you going. And I in the past I've shopped online. I still do, but I've shopped online a lot. First for the same reason, because it like gives you that little like dopamine drip, and then you get a package, and it's like, oh yay. So I would much rather just enjoy the the new veins and especially as I get older, my face is just losing all the volume. But I love it. To your point, I mean, there's probably something wrong with us, but I get so excited. I see myself. I start recording myself. I'm like, oh my gosh, look at me! I look like handsome Squidward.
Oh, yeah, because it is. I feel like as well at the height of off season, it's a bit of a weird space because I feel like I'm absolutely fine with the physique growing and we go through ebbs and flows, right, where it's sort of like you look and different angles hit different, etc. But I find that the face gets to a point and it does, like you say, you're sort of doing a story or whatever, and you can't help but feel like, oh, look at my cheeks,
I
like.
look like a chipmunk. Yes. No, I'm the same way. Like to your point, it ebbs and flows off season. I feel like it's also kind of just comes with being a woman, honestly. I definitely it's usually my face. My face when it gets to a certain point, I'm like, all right, I'm ready to prep, I'm ready to diet. Everything else, I can deal the behind, like, are you kidding me? I'm like, oh, this is great, this is great. But then I start seeing my face. I'm like, okay, well, we could, cut down a little bit.
Nelson, we need to do a mini cut.
Yeah, exactly.
So when we last had you on, of course, it was around the sort of the medical conditions, the things that were happening in the last preparation, and then you had a bit of time, and then did you go into a constructed growth phase before you came into this preparation?
So yes and no. It wasn't so basically when I was having all of the health issues, really all of 2024, until like late fall, I was not training very hard, even throughout prep, everything. Like I was down to 4 days a week, whereas previously I was 5 days. And my workouts were like an hour. Normally they're like an hour and a half. Just I was not training to I shouldn't say my full potential, because at the time that was all my body could handle, but my mental capacity I really was not training how I wanted to be. And then after that, we got me back to the 5 days, but we weren't pushing calories up really high, we weren't trying to do anything crazy, we really just wanted to get my body to like homeostasis again, and just a healthier spot. So there wasn't anything super, like we want to put on X amount of weight, X amount of muscle tissue, or anything like that. It was really more just like enjoying myself again and falling back in love with it. Because for so long it was such a chore, and it was so hard. And and I think almost all bodybuilders are like this. It's really the training, and it's the day-to-day stuff, and it's being in the gym. And when you can't do that, you kind of start to lose yourself a little bit, especially when it's not up here. Because when it's up here and you just take a step back, that's very different. But when you're in it, but your body is just not about it, that was really, really difficult for me. So when we came into deciding that we wanted to try to prep again this year, it was really just like, let's see what we can do. Let's see what happens. Let's see how your training can go. And I'll be completely honest with you, we still don't really know how, but I did grow a lot and I put on a lot of tissue, and I mean, I've always trained very hard. I like to train, but because it wasn't like, oh, we're going to push calories up and we're going to do this and we're trying to put, I was just really surprised. My calories never really got that high. I wasn't really ever eating like a ton of food to grow. But I think more than anything, what it was is that I just fell back in love with it again and I was doing what I loved and we let my body get to a healthy place and it responded really, really well. And then, yeah, then we started prep. So
I love that example, Nicole, because it's something I do talk about. There's a lot of this, particularly social media, where it's like you've got to push a fuck ton of calories. You've really got to, be eating loads, and we get it in our head that it's like, you've got to have this high surplus. And I see it so much more now with, the training intensity, the mindset around training, your day to day, your normal supplementation, your fluid intake, all of these little things. And then, maintenance or just above, you can still accrue a really good amount of muscle. And, you've said it and outlined it there perfectly. And it's such a good example of that because, of course, off season, you can get a bit carried away, right? Like you've done a prep, you want to have all this food, it's heightened by social media, as I say. And it's quite a weird space sometimes, particularly, small females. It might be the calories don't actually go that high, and it can be quite a mind warp, I think, when you're sort of first getting into the realms of off seasons, etc. Like, oh, is this all I get, So it's a good example.
yeah, I've noticed the same thing, especially on social media. There's this, it seems like, underlying belief amongst many people that if you're not eating X amount of calories, or if your calories are this low, whatever it may be, that's wrong and that's a problem. And you can't put on tissue and you can't do this and you can't do that. And oh, your coach is burying you, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And sometimes that may be true. Obviously, that could be true. But I do think that everybody is different. I've never been someone that eats a lot of food, honestly. I would love to mentally. But the other thing is like, and for me especially, digestion is a big issue. And so if you're eating too much and you're just, you're bloating all the time and you're not eating the right things and whatever it may be, that can cause another, massive wrench in the plan, and that's going to affect your training. And again, that's going to affect your mindset, because I know for me as a female, like if I start to put on too much body fat, like that also impacts me when I'm training, even because then in the gym I'm like more worried about what I look like than, and that's never a good spot to be in. But I definitely think that everybody is different. There are people that run through food like crazy. I'm just not one of those people. And I can still push a lot of weight and I can still cause growth without eating a ton of food. And I think that's fine. And it may be different for someone else, but the biggest thing, to your point, with social media especially, is just like comparing yourself. And the same way that cookie cutter plans don't work for people when they're dieting, it doesn't work in an off season situation either. Everybody has different needs. Everybody has different goals, and bodies are just so unique and different that it's just not possible to sort of make a blanket statement of you should be eating this much or that much. So
Yeah, as well, like you say with training, for sure, there is that element of the bespoke programming. For your example of going down to 4 days, it's like, and any example of someone that needs to essentially be able to reroute a little bit with training, whether it's an injury, whatever it may be. There's so many things that we can do, but again, if it's this sort of, like you say, cookie cutter type vibe, it's like you don't have to do X machine or X exercise. It is bespoke to you. And also the mind muscle connection, the intention, and being able to learn the skill of training. I'm sure you'd agree.
yeah, and it's speaking of training, and we had gone down to the 4 days, and for the first time, I've been training for 12 years now, and for the first time in my life, when we did start this prep, a couple weeks in, I think we actually switched to push pull legs. And the reason that I had never been, and it's like an 8-day cycle, a very typical sort of bodybuilding split. But the reason we had never done that before was because there were parts of my body that needed to come up. And that's very common. There are usually you're going to be in a situation when you start bodybuilding that, depending on your division, maybe you need to grow glutes, maybe you need, and you have to train for your division. So if you're in wellness, like you're probably not doing a bunch of back days. You probably shouldn't be. Um, but so we were able to switch to a push pull legs only because once we did get back to training, get back up to the 5 days, and we saw the tissue that I did put on, I was in a much more balanced position. So we were able to switch now to the push pull legs. But to your point, that's such like a typical bodybuilding thing. And people starting out may start with that. And that may be great. Like, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. But I think for a lot of people, it's not always the best route. But we get so bogged up in like oh, this is the way, and this is the how you need to grow, and this is how you need to eat, whatever. But yeah, I mean, it's been 12 years for me, and then since I've been bodybuilding, gosh, when did I start? 2022, so like 3-4 years actual bodybuilding, and like yeah, we never did that. So it really does. It depends on your body. It depends on where you are. It depends on your division, everything, but there's no one way to do things at all, and I've definitely learned that.
Well, it's for sure. I feel like it adds substance to the athlete to actually learn a bit more about the different things we can do because it builds that, like we were talking about at the start, the excitement of like, oh, okay, so I know that this works for me, or I know this doesn't work for me, and then that communication with the coach. And I know that you and Nelson are very close because, of course, that bond on top of then you being almost like the pupil, right? Like, I want to learn more, I want to learn more. And then that pursuit
Right.
is heightened. If you're of that way, if you're of an inquisitive mind, it really
Mhm.
adds substance to the journey, doesn't it?
It really does, and it's so funny because I remember when he when he suggested maybe push pull legs. I he The way he presented it to me, he was like, "This might stress you out, and I know you don't like change, and let me know if this would be possible." Like, he was like so scared because I am pretty rigid. But I will say something I learned from last year and from last time: I've become much more fluid. I've become much, easier, I feel like, and I kind of go with the flow a little bit more. So I was like, no, like, I'm down to try it. And I asked him, like, why, and this is why. He told me again, well, because you're much more balanced now, and I feel like this is something that we can do, and we can play around with rest days more, and if you need like two things like that, like, it's just easier to sort of fit in where things aren't super structured and super strict. You can kind of move things around as you need. So yeah, I'm very much like, if he tells me to do something, I'm going to do it regardless, but I will ask why.
Ask questions, always ask questions.
Yes, you should always ask questions, even if, like, again, like, I trust Nelson with my life. So if he tells me to do something, I'm gonna do it, but you should still know why.
For sure, for sure. So do you, when you reflect back on, of course, we've touched on a little bit about last year and coming through that. Have you found that there's any other pivotal things that you've learned that you've taken forward into this prep? Obviously, the gratefulness, I'd imagine.
Yes. I'm just so I wake up every day. I mean, I'm hungry. I'm in it. Like, you can tell from my face. But I am so grateful that I can do this and that my body is allowing me to do this year, and it's not fighting us tooth and nail. So it really, gratitude has been, it has changed the entire process for me. Last year, I just felt so bad, and not just prep bad. Like, now we know, like, there was some very serious things going on, and it was hard for me to discern at the time. But looking back, I can now be like, okay, that was not normal, and I should never feel like that again. And just being able to do it now without feeling like that. Like, I embrace the hunger in a way that I never really did before, because I'm like, I can't believe that I can even feel hungry, because I wasn't even hungry last year. That was like another thing. It's like I never even felt hunger. And the way that my body is responding this year is just, it's just so different, and it became fun again. It wasn't a chore. Last year it was so hard for me to even get out of bed that, I'll be completely honest, like, I wasn't enjoying it at all. And obviously there are things that you enjoy more than others, but it was just it was a nightmare, honestly. And I wish that at the time I had recognized that sooner, and obviously I wish that what happened didn't happen. And once I did get super sick and had to pull out of that first show, of course looking back I'm like, well, I really just should have stopped then. But I'm not really someone that, I don't really believe in having regrets like that, because everything that you do, every decision you make, for better or for worse, that's how you got to where you are. And I'm so grateful, and I'm having so much fun again. And like I remember the thought of posing last year drove me absolutely, I couldn't even like get like, it was terrible. And now like I went in the gym this morning and I was like, oh, I have some extra time, like I can't, like I'm gonna go do my routine, I'm gonna go do this. And I just, I don't regret anything that happened. Obviously, yeah, it sucked, but I wouldn't be where I am right now, and maybe I wouldn't be enjoying it as much and having as much fun and being as grateful as I am. So, I think the biggest thing for me was just falling back in love with the process again, and falling in love with training again, and just realizing that like this is a privilege. It really is. And I feel like that's such a that's such like a common thing for people to say, and it's so easy to be like, ah, whatever. But it truly, once you experience truly not being able to do it, it just really is, it's such a privilege. And I wake up every day so excited, even on the super hungry days. I have a moment and then I'm like, you know what, this is awesome.
It's like I've literally just got to sit with this. I did a podcast not long ago called The Hunger Games with my friend Romana. It's something I reference with clients. I'm like, welcome to the Hunger Games.
Yep.
It becomes this sort of psychological, again, like we were saying, getting off on the death face. It's there's got to be almost this sort of cathartic, well, not got to be, but if you want to last a prep, if you've really got to dig, if you're really pushing for condition, there's some merit in trying to get off on it, and be
Yeah.
like, so what can I do between meals, or how can I make this work? Of course, as well, the social media side of things we spoke about, you know, there can be the use of a lot of sugar-free stuff, and trying to make the diet more palatable, trying to, enjoy it more. And I'd be interested to know how your diet is, because we were talking about essentially trying to just sit with the hunger and go for the foods that digest well and that are as GI friendly as possible. Obviously, it's a bit of an exploration at times. But how are you on a food plan? How is your setup?
Yeah, so I am on a meal plan. So I eat, same things every day, slightly different amounts depending on if it's an off day, high day, etc. I've genuinely eaten the same foods with Nelson since the beginning. So we know what digests well, we know what works well. He can look at me in the morning and know what I need to eat that day. And I will say a big change this prep from previous years, digestion, I've been so focused on, because that was one of the issues that I had last year, where I had the SMA syndrome and everything. I had, it was that was a nightmare. So I, going into the prep as a sort of, I guess, the prep for the prep, I was like, you know what, I really want to cut down on anything sugar free. For weeks and weeks and weeks, I was using absolutely like nothing. I used a little bit of sugar free ketchup on my eggs, but I used to do like the water flavoring. I used to drink so many sodas, energy drinks like up the wazoo. Like it was insane. So in preparation for prep, I was like, listen, I know at a certain point I am going to start to need like coffee. I am going to start to need an energy drink on an off day where I don't have pre-workout. So what I did was I cut out like all caffeine and like all artificial sweeteners. And what that did for me, honestly, artificial sweeteners like don't taste very good anymore. Once you detox yourself from it, it sucks for like a couple of days. But the biggest thing I would say is to do it in before you start a diet, because then you're more satisfied and it's not as problematic. So I have, yeah, I eat, chicken, rice cakes, an apple. I don't eat any red meat. I used to have one red meat meal. We're down to literally all chicken, some eggs, egg whites, oats. That's literally it. And I use the same sauces. I don't use a ton of sauces. I have started to have a soda at night. I'm not gonna lie, a
Uh,
diet soda. But it's those things, right, where it's like before I was just like constant. It was like an IV drip, and now like yeah, it doesn't. taste that good anymore. It gets super bitter. You can taste when there's artificial sweeteners in something. And what that has allowed me to do is now, as I get, deeper into the diet and like, okay, like I'm gonna have a Diet Coke at night, one of those truly is not gonna do anything to me because I'm drinking enough water and I'm not using them all day. And my digestion this prep has been so much, but not even just last year, my first prep too, like so much better. Everything has been so much easier, so much better. So as much as it sucks, to your point, you do, if you embrace it, you will see the dividends. And when you're not like bloating yourself out every night and just like drinking sugar-free ketchup and like a ton of water, things like that, once you cut back on that, and you're getting off on the fact that you can see new lines and you can see your face and things like that, those things start happening more frequently because you're not super bloated out and you don't feel crappy. So yeah, it's been, that was something that I really wanted to take very seriously this prep, just because I know that digestion plays such a huge role in all of this. So that was something that before I started dieting I really honed in on, and I'm very proud of myself. I went several weeks with like zero caffeine, which is insane. So
Any headaches?
oh yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah, at the beginning, yeah. So I would say the first, like, honestly, it was like 3 or 4 days. It wasn't a full week, but for like 3 or 4 days, there was definitely some intense headaches. But it's worth it because that's the other thing is like once I got that like killer headache the first day, I was like, shoot, I am so reliant on this. And that to me, that alone was like scary enough that I was like, I don't want to be so reliant on this that even in an off season where I'm completely fine, I got a couple cheat meals a week, like I should not be this reliant on a crutch ultimately. And again, I'm not gonna lie, like I got water here, but I got some coffee. So like we do get to a point where like I need a little pick me up, but it's as long as you're not overusing it and as long as you're, keeping everything within reason, it really is just so much better. And like it'll help your sleep, it'll help just your skin, even everything. But the headaches were hellacious for a couple of days, I'm not gonna lie.
I can imagine. I do as well. I like what you said there about essentially the titration of caffeine. I was actually talking to a prep client about this last week, where so before we go into a prep, any of my clients, I always ask about, double check the caffeine, the sodium intake, etc. And we have all of that, as data, as it were, for the start of prep. Because ideally, like you said, the off season, you titrate down off the back of, the preparation and you essentially resensitize a certain amount. And then in the preparation, we're now, a good chunk into prep, and it's like, is it the right time for us to maybe add, a little bit of caffeine here, or are we okay? And then you've got that option to, as I say, titrate over the prep. And I really like that because, again, like you say, in off season, if we need two, three, four coffees, when you've got all the food, hopefully recovery's in a good spot, etc. There's also merit to think, well, where do you then go in the preparation if you're going to use caffeine manipulation? And I think that sometimes that can get missed a little bit.
Absolutely. That was another, I didn't, as I was talking, I didn't even really think of that. But as you started talking, I was like, yeah, caffeine is actually, that can be used in prep, right? That can be manipulated. That it's a great way, sort of lower risk, obviously, than a lot of the other things. And so if you're in a spot where your caffeine intake is already like a gram a day and then you get into prep and you're exhausted, what else are you going to do? Because you can't be taking in that much caffeine. So it really is. And it's those little things, right? Like once you really get serious about it and you got, your training's good, you're on a meal plan, you know how to do everything. It's these little things that once you start manipulating them, that's where you're going to start reaching those next levels, those higher levels. So yeah, it can definitely be used in a prep situation. And if you're so high, you got nowhere to go. So, as you know, if you got the caffeine headaches, etc., I know it sucks, but just stick through it for a couple of days because it does get better. It's like when you stop washing your hair every day, it gets better. So,
Well, I love that. Also, as well, when we look at tools for a prep and how your physique has responded overall, it's like, potentially when we look at where you had to pull back so much last year and then you went to sort of the maintenance and the pre-prep prep period and then went into prep, there is merit as well. and this is something that can happen if you spank a lot of cardio, etc. in off season. It's something that I speak to my clients about, and steps even any expenditure. I always frame it as, where do we then go in the preparation? Now, of course, there's going to be people that might have jobs that are really active, so their steps are high, etc. But I feel like as a coach as well, we need to look at, what can we manage so that in the
Yeah.
prep you can actually, potentially titrate caffeine up, titrate expenditure up, and be able to have a constructive prep so that ideally, and we forget this when we're in it, that you can bring the fresh look, have results throughout the prep, and maybe you don't have to go as savage because yes,
Yes.
we're that type of personality, aren't we? It's like give me all the pain. But
Hmm.
of course, if you can manipulate things over the seasons with your coach and then construct it, it might even be that you start having more high days around the show, etc. And there's a smart planning, but again, we can sort of thinking obviously, oh, I'll go and do, all these sets of this cardio because you're
Yeah.
addicted to it to a certain degree, aren't you?
I love cardio. Yeah, no, exactly. I love cardio. I will say my steps are always really, really high. I struggle with not moving a lot. I do have ADHD. I'm constantly on the move. I stay very, very busy. But if it were up to me, I would do cardio every single day of my life. I absolutely love it. But I remember from my first prep, and I had less muscle to start with, obviously, but I was doing 2 sessions a day. I was using the Stairmaster, and my legs just got super eaten up, and I felt like crap all the time. And like, it was, I loved it to a degree, but like, it wasn't ideal to put a body on stage looking fresh and looking the best that you can be. So, yeah, we definitely pulled back cardio. I mean, especially when I was sick last year, I wasn't doing any cardio. I did a little bit in the off season. Obviously, there are cardiovascular benefits, and you want to stay healthy. But now, my cardio is 6 sessions of 30 minutes on the elliptical, and that has not gone up. And we started with five. I think we started with five for 25 minutes. Then we went to 30 minutes, and now we're at six. But that hasn't changed in weeks, and I honestly don't anticipate it changing. If anything, we'll probably pull back as we go into the show. We'll see. I don't know. That would be my guess. But compared to what I was doing, I think I was doing my first prep. I was Stairmaster 40 minutes in the morning, and then I think 30 minutes at night. So it's a huge every day. Also 7 days a week. So it's a huge difference. And that's another thing to your point that you can manipulate, and you don't want to be burying yourself because you're going to be hungry. You're going to be tired. It is what it is. So if you can keep those things under control in your off season. And that's another thing where we talk about like if you want to be eating a ton of food, you probably will be doing a little more cardio just so you're more comfortable with how you look. But if you're not trying to chase a specific calorie goal for whatever reason, maybe you can do a little less cardio, and then your lifts are going to be better anyway. There's trade-offs with everything, but definitely to your point, yeah, the cardio thing. I wish. I love it. I love sweating. I love feeling, just that adrenaline rush. But it definitely, when I get to this point, I'm like, no, I'm very thankful that I took that time to not be as crazy.
Sure. It's interesting you mentioned ADHD. There'll be people listening that also have ADHD. There's quite a few of the listeners that have reached out, and I feel like this sport potentially does have that attraction to, there's a lot of things we can do, there's tick boxes, etc., and the purpose. How did you find managing the ADHD around, when you weren't able to do as much cardio and the training reduced, etc., or were you just so sort of in the gutter, as it were, from the medical standpoint that it overrid that?
Yeah. So basically, that was a really tough time for me because yeah, like I would just be sitting there and not being able to do anything, and physically, right? Like, because like I physically couldn't do anything, but my mind was going insane. And I had such a difficult, that was one of the reasons I had such a difficult time last year handling everything. As this year, obviously, my body being better, so I can like, just run around and do all my little things. I have so many lists. I keep to a list. And I love doing something all the time. I don't like just sitting there, but I started reading this year again.
Cool.
That helped me so much because now I can like take myself out of the world, like the actual world, and throw myself into some other sort of world. And that has helped me. So because again, I'm trying to not like walk 25,000 steps a day. I'm trying to be a little more, I guess, normal. That's a bad word, but trying to be a little more reasonable, I should say. But when I was down and out and I really couldn't do anything, I couldn't turn off my brain. And I also, so I do take medication, but the same way that I didn't want to be like relying on coffee, for example, I don't like being super reliant on my medication. So I only take it during the week, and I only take it if I'm working. Like if for whatever reason, if I have like a day off of work, or if I have like my work is kind of cyclical. So if I have a super slow day at work, I try to not take it then either.
Yeah.
Um, that helps me during the week, obviously, but then the weekends do get a little dicey for me. But the hardest thing is just, yeah, turning off that brain. And when I didn't have the outlet of training and of doing all, checking all my box, I had no boxes to check. That was definitely, it was very, very, very difficult. So for anyone that does struggle with ADHD and that are in this lifestyle, I completely understand why. I know how great it is. But like anything else, like you can't avoid the mental aspect of it. So the only thing I would say is don't use it as a way to sort of just turn off your brain and just completely throw, you still have to deal with whatever is going on up there. And I'll also take this opportunity then to say that this year I started talk therapy as well, which has helped me so much, both with, just dealing with everyday life, but dealing with last year and managing my ADHD. That was like a huge, I haven't been to talk therapy in like over 10 years, I think. And yeah, I started that in, I believe, February this year. And that has been amazing. And I'm the type of person that I always was like, oh, the gym is my therapy. This is my therapy. And that can be true. And I'm not saying like everybody needs to go to therapy, but everybody needs to go to therapy.
I love that you've actually mentioned this because this is gold because literally a couple of episodes ago I had a psychologist on and she
Oh,
actually specializes in addiction and we were talking about a multitude of things. But I actually raised to her, I had a conversation with a friend in the industry and we were talking about some bodybuilders, not everyone, but the sort of fear around labeling it as I'm having therapy. I think you sort of get two camps and then people in the middle where it's like some people quite like to say I'm having therapy and I have a coach and I'm a competitive bodybuilder. Others will be like, nope, don't need that. And it's very relevant what you've just said there because we spoke about it. And she said even the T word, she calls it therapy.
yeah.
If she can get them, we're working with her under the umbrella of sports performance coach because
Okay.
she's labeled that as well. And then she says, well, actually, we're going to go through talk therapy. And it's the first time that I feel like I'm sure over just over 3 years that someone's mentioned talk therapy. So it's interesting that you've actually mentioned that. There's obviously different types of therapy, but I don't know if you talk about it a little bit more for anyone listening.
Yeah, so basically, when I call it's just the typical like I go into the office and I just sit there and I sit on a couch and I just chat with this woman, and it may be whatever comes up, whatever I need her for. You're just truly talking through whatever it may be, because there are different types of therapy, right? There are like exposure therapy, things like that. So talk therapy is literally, I mean, it's just person driven. It's just a neutral random party. I shouldn't say random, but a neutral trained party that you can talk to. And, because the other thing is like I said, I do have ADHD. So I see a psychiatrist who manages my medication, but I don't do therapy. Technically, yeah, it's a psychiatrist, but like I don't do therapy with her. I don't do talk therapy with her. So I see a psychologist to do this talk therapy. And I think the biggest reason that it's sort of a little taboo to talk about is because it can be seen as a weakness. And this was honestly, like, I'll be honest, this was my perspective. So I shouldn't say that everybody feels this way, but this was, if I look at it now, from the outside, because like I have been through a lot in my adult life that I should have been going to therapy for, and I'm now talking about it like, 10, 8, whatever years later. And I wish that I had started it sooner, but again, we started at the perfect time. But I think my biggest fear behind it was like I don't need that. Like I'm mentally strong. I'm fine. I don't need a crutch. I don't need to. I'm not crazy. That's another thing. You're not crazy if you have to go to therapy. Like we're us as humans, like we all have crap going on in our head. We all deal with crazy things, especially in this day and age. And while it can be great if you have close family members, close friends, I have both of those things. There are certain things that you just it's tough to talk about, and it's also really hard when the person that you're trying to confide in loves you and is in your life for a reason. They're going to be a little biased. That's the biggest thing. Like no matter how much they try to take themselves out of the situation, if you're comfortable enough to talk to them, you have an existing strong relationship, and there's love there. And it's very, very hard to have a truly neutral perspective from someone like that. I'm not taking away from, I talk to my family, I talk to my loved ones, I talk to my friends, absolutely. But there's something to be said about someone who truly doesn't know you at all and can be a completely just outside the situation, and you just talk and you just say, hey, this is what's going on. And my therapist, she will never tell me what to do. She'll never say this is what's going on. But and sometimes I wish she would, but it's just guiding you. You already know, when you go through situations and you have things in your life, like somewhere in your head and your heart, like you kind of already know what to do, but it's hard to get there sometimes because of things like other relationships and love and things going on in your life. So the biggest thing for me was just getting over that hump of like, I don't need this, and I'm not crazy, and I'm so strong, and I can work through it all in my head. No, I can't. So yeah.
it I feel like there's so much power in getting it out of here into the
Yeah.
existence, and being able to. I feel like, a good therapist or someone that's guiding you, as it were, in whatever realm, is able to offer that safe space for you to verbalize how you feel and then make your own way to the
Definitely.
destination or the solution. And that's often, part of coaching as well, depending on what part, you're looking at there. But when you build that team, you can start to do that as well. So it might be that Nelson sort of paves the way towards something and you think, oh, I've thought of that, but he's actually paved the way to it. And then that's the guide, taking over. And I love this type of talk because, again, it's not weakness. And we actually said on this episode that it's like the athlete can actually become a better athlete, a stronger athlete, more performance, and a better physique response. And now look what's happening to you. Now, we're not saying it's all down to therapy as it were, but the more in tuned into yourself, Nicole, like what an opportunity to learn you and add substance to your bodybuilding journey as well and your life as a person.
Yes, it has opened up so much bandwidth for me. That's what it really is. I have way more bandwidth, and I can, again, it's funny because the way that Nelson had to present the push pull legs to me, where he was like, "Oh, is this going to be okay?" I could handle that because I'm not as like high strung anymore. Honestly, I'm still very particular. My nickname has, since I've known Nelson, has been Nikki Neurosis. I'm still a little neurotic. I'm still a little crazy.
Relate.
And I think yeah, I think I'll always be that way. But truly, like this has opened up so much bandwidth, and it's just to your point, just getting it out of here and just like it, into the netherworld, like wherever. It has helped so so much, and both in my life and with bodybuilding. Yeah, because I'm not keeping everything inside. I'm not constantly overthinking things because your body will have a stress response for sure, and that's definitely been like a huge help for sure. So I recommend it to everybody. It is difficult sometimes to find someone that you trust. It's difficult to find like a good therapist, but if it's something that you're at all thinking about, just do it. Just try it. And I think that the majority of people will definitely see a lot of benefit from it. So
Yeah. And I feel like as well with your story in itself of what you went through and having to step back from a preparation and then the comeback, obviously the title of the episode, I feel like there could be people that are listening that have had to maybe step back from a prep or, there's an injury or whatever it may be. And actually the bridge to going back into a prep later on and having that hiatus and having to, pull back in order to move forward, that's quite hard. And I hear a lot of stories of people that then come out of bodybuilding because they think my passion's gone. I'm not a good bodybuilder. All of this stuff's happened. But actually, you're giving that example of a comeback. And that in itself mentally is very hard, isn't it? To go back into a prep. But if you're doing all the things that you're talking about there, it's showing steps to get there.
Yeah, and to that I would say, I was so hell bent on getting on stage last year and
Well,
so hell bent on getting on stage again. But before we started this prep, I did get to the point where I said, I don't know how much longer I'm going to be able to do this. I could end tomorrow. I don't know. I didn't know. I didn't know how my body was going to respond. I didn't know if I was going to be able to do this again. And I used all that time, because when it first happened last year, I was inconsolable. We talked about that last episode. Like I did not handle it well at all. And I thought like my life was over. Which was so silly, but that's how I felt at the time. So it really isn't silly. It's just feelings are feelings. And I was able to get myself to a point where I really did say, I don't know what's next for me. I don't know if I'll be able to do this again, but I'm going to try because I want to and not because I feel like I have to or because I feel like I have to prove something. Because that's how I felt at the beginning. At the beginning, like when I kept trying to push to do those next shows and my body was just not happy, it's because I felt like I had to prove something. And that's why it didn't work. It didn't work out for me. And I got to myself to the point where I was like, you know what? If I can do this, I want to for me, for my family, for everyone that's been here, since the beginning. And if I can't, I can't. That's okay. That doesn't say anything about me. But if I can, I'm gonna try. And that's another reason that it has become like it's just again like I'm so grateful it's for no one else. It's truly for me. And if something, so that being said, like if something does happen and you stop bodybuilding and whatever it may be, if it's not for you, that's okay. If you find yourself in a situation where you're like, I have to get back in the gym because I have to prove that I'm tough enough, I'm hard enough, like I can do it, that's not a reason to do it. You need to truly love it and to be doing it for yourself. And I say it to people all the time, especially, young girls that, I meet in the gym. It's like, oh, the stage will always be there. Take your time. And again, that's one of those kind of stock phrases you hear a lot, but it's so true. It's so true. So I really accepted the fact that I might not be able to do it. And as soon as I did that, it seemed like my body was like, okay, we're ready to go.
there is a lot of emphasis on, that whole sentiment there of essentially taking the pressure off. But then what I find is if it works out, you can then apply pressure as you get closer to the show. We're intrinsically motivated. We're people that do well under the constructive pressure. You can then tolerate pressure in a good way to drive you to your goals and your ambitions. But if it's this like external pressure of, as you say, I have to do it, or don't want to let my coach down, don't want to let people down, da da da. It's like they're not the ones that have got to do this, right? They're not the
Yeah.
ones that are in your head and
Mhm.
have the physiological outcomes. And oh, I'm just so glad we spoke about that because it's so true. And as you say, it's like the stage will always be there. I did an episode saying the stage will always be there because from through my journey and having surgery myself,
Yeah.
I'm not competing this year. So I've done a diet and I've loved it. My physique's responded more than ever before because the pressure's off, because it was like, let's see. And, again, like you say, I went into it. If I can compete, if I'm competitive enough, I can look at that. If I'm not, I need to grow again. But again, it's that loving of the phases, isn't it? So, when you come out of prep, it's like, right, what do I need to do to get better? Even if you win, it's like, how can I get better? You know?
Yeah, always. Yeah, I was gonna say too, yeah, like you're looking insane, and I knew that you had decided to not necessarily compete this year, and like I think that there's so much power in that because one, you're doing it yourself. Is that, am I correct? Yeah. So first of all, that's just badass, but there's so much power in that because you can truly decide what that means. Like you're not under any time constraints. You're not under any external pressure. You're doing it solely for you. And like you said, like you look insane and you do. It's it can't be for anybody else. And again, I know that that is so common to hear, but it's true. Like you can't do it to get your pictures. You can't do it because, you know, your mom wants to see you once. You just you can't. As much as as much as that would be nice, you're the only person that's dieting, the only person that's going through it is you. And so if you don't have the right reasons, not only should you not do it, your body probably isn't going to look as good as it could. So,
And it
but you
is.
look insane.
Thank you so much for that. It makes me. Um,
No, you no, seriously. I was looking at your pictures before we like I mean for weeks, but then especially when we decided to do this again, I was like, damn, she's looking good.
so much. It's well, as you can attest to, it's very surreal when because we're not. I would say we're very similar in regards to like we're not looking for. If you get, you complimenting me, that's really like that really hits, and I'm like that's so nice because I respect you and we have the relationship we have. However, I'm not seeking it out, as it were. So it hits different, doesn't it? Because it's like, wow, that feels really nice. And again, for your physique response, it's like wow, and there's merit to what we're talking about here, but it also helps us spread a message rather than, we're saying all this stuff and it's not really correlating with what we're sharing. It's like there's so much substance in it because you then get the external gratification and you're like, whoa, this is really
Yeah.
nice. I'm sure you get the same sort of thing. And it's surreal looking at yourself, isn't it?
Yes. Because I don't really like I'll post things on Instagram like I know you do as well. Like I definitely will. But this is another thing I've done very differently this prep is like I'm not sharing nearly as much as I have in the past, and that's solely because not because I'm trying to like hide anything or like like whatever it may be. It's solely because there was so much external pressure on me that I was taking on that I shouldn't have. And again, we talked about this last episode, and that's why I just did not handle things, the best way that I could have. So I've been very intentional this year with like what I'm sharing, who I'm talking to, who I'm showing. As far as like daily pictures, like yeah, like my boyfriend and Nelson. That's sometimes my mom, not even my mom, honestly, as much as like I used to keep her in the loop, not for any negative reason, but it's just when it's solely for you, you just don't really feel the need to share it so much. And then when you do get those compliments, it is to your point, like you're like, oh crap, like that's really cool. Like that feels really good because I wasn't looking for it. I wasn't expecting it. And it hits so much different and it's so much like better. And yeah, like again, like the only thing I really care about is my coach's, approval. But and it's not to say, if people want to post like their prep, if they want to, that's fine. But for me personally, I've just found that this is much better for me mentally. But then to your point, whenever you do post something, it's like, oh,
Yeah.
thanks. Thanks so much.
Is as well. I'd be quite interested to know your thoughts around because I'm finishing the diet essentially this week, and then I've got the reverse out. Obviously, it's not for a show, so it's different. However, I started to have these thoughts. I was talking about my story because I was like, I've just realised that I'm coming away from dieting after 19 weeks. Whoa, I sort of forgot about how that could feel because there's no show, and I've always done shows and. I've been thinking about this a lot and constructing my own reverse out. I feel like this, what I've done here, it feels so different to that drive to sort of, go for a load of meals after and do all the things that we sort of get caught up in the bodybuilding space, social media, etc. And I'm just looking forward to fueling my body again and not, spanking it, I call it.
Yeah.
Of course I'm going to incorporate some treats and we're going to talk about your little baking endeavors, but I just feel very different. I don't know if you've had any, obviously you're in the midst of a prep, but any thoughts sort of for the post show as well?
Yeah, previously I've been entirely food focused like the entire time. And I'm not gonna lie, there are definitely like some things that I want and I look at, you know. But I'm thinking like I haven't like planned out a post show meal. I haven't like planned out like what I want to do. Because honestly, like it's again like I'm just enjoying the process and enjoying the being nice to my body. Because again, I mean it prepping is not super nice to your body, but whereas last year like everything was a punishment, it's really just not about that anymore. And for me, I get so excited if I get a high day and I get some extra oats. Like really all I want is like extra
Sure.
oats. Like I don't, and yes, there will be meals, like there will be things that I enjoy for sure. But I think that again, once you start really doing it for the right reasons, that does change and that can help post show a lot, whereas you're not, you know, overeating and getting it, because of course it is very difficult. You feel very hungry, things of that nature. I think making sure that you're doing it for the right reasons can even help things like that. And I definitely, again, I love food. I love food content, like for sure. As to your, yeah, I'm baking, but it feels very different for me this year as well, because it's not about punishing my body. It's about being thankful for my body. And I know that, yeah, like binging a bunch of stuff after is never going to make you feel good. So it's just not something that I've been thinking, yeah, a ton about it all, which is nice. It gives me more bandwidth.
So it's again, that's quite surreal, and that's why I talk about it. And it's really nice to ask you because I'm like, God, I used to focus on food so much. I'd be
Yeah.
clock watching, I'd be visualizing the next meal and all of this stuff with the bandwidth. Essentially, it's making your bandwidth go very,
Yeah.
very small and you're just thinking about food. And again, there's, merit in being experienced and going through that and not wanting to sort of go back there. But honestly, I reference it as a gift I'd like to give, any competitors that do struggle with the food pathology side of things and the focus there because and I label it as the boring bit. It's like whatever you're repopulating your gut with after the preparation, as you've outlined there, what we do in a prep, there can be quite a good healthy spot, as it were, but then the depths, obviously, we are going extreme. But then you got to think about your body doesn't know what's about to come. Your mind does, but your body doesn't know that you're going to eat all of these different foods, and it's quite hard, with the digestion, etc. But again, doing it for the right reasons I feel like it again hits different, right? It's like, oh,
Yeah.
and I'm very much like I get up each day and I'm like, right, this is my day. This is my tick boxes. I do my gym, my cardio, and you go for it and you're just like, oh, I just feel really good. Also, as well, it's like, how does this feel so good?
I
Being
know.
so dieted down and being like, but I still feel quite good.
Yeah. I have like like Saturdays for whatever reason are pretty tough for me, but I wake up every Monday and I'm just like I was so even yesterday I was like, okay, I'm recording this podcast, like, you know, you might not have the energy, like you can do this, you can do this. I woke up today, I was like, oh, I'm great. I'm great. So I totally feel that. I absolutely feel that.
I love it. Now, baking business, before we wrap up, how did that come back? Like, have you always done baking, or is this like a hobby that's now turned into more of a sort of adventure, as it were?
Yeah, so I a couple of years ago I started so I'm the baby of my family.
Okay.
I come from an Italian family, but I'm the baby. So I was never doing the cooking, I was never doing the baking. My mom, my sisters, my grandmother, etc. A couple years ago, I found out that I can cook. And then I
Your
found
body
out, like,
doesn't.
just yeah, like I don't know, like, it was just because it's instinct. I don't use recipes. Like, I was like, oh, like, I'm actually a pretty good cook. Okay, great. And then I started baking. And it turned out I was pretty good at that too. And my boyfriend is like obsessed. He loves my cooking, he loves my baking, but I'm
Same.
like, "Oh, yeah, but he's like he's my boyfriend." So like obviously he's going to say that. He started a job where he goes into the office a couple days a week, before it was work from home. And one day a week, they have this really long meeting. It's like several hours. And for whatever reason, I was like, oh, like, I'm gonna bake something for you to bring to that meeting. That's where it started. And now every week, every Tuesday, they like anticipate it, they expect it, they're so excited, they love it. And the compliments from them were just making me, I was like, are you serious? They've never met me though. Like they still haven't met me. So I'm like, they have no reason to lie. And genuinely, they were like, because everybody dreads this meeting, dreads this meeting. They call it the grinder, like they dread it. And so I just started, baking, and my boyfriend started bringing it in. And from there, I started posting a lot on Instagram, and people would always message me and they were like, hey, like, do you sell your cookies? Do you ship your cookies? And I was like, oh, I don't know. I don't know. And then it's become a massive hobby for me in this prep, especially. And enough people said something and enough people asked that I was like, you know what? I'm gonna try this. So yeah, at the end of this month, I'm actually gonna post it today, I believe. We're gonna do a pre-order menu and I'm gonna leave it open for like about a week and we're gonna kind of see what orders come in and we're gonna try a cookie drop and see how it goes and just go from there. But yeah, it's called Cheat Days. DAZE. DAZE, Cheat
Oh, I
Days,
love that.
and it's Cheat Days, DAZEMI. That is the Instagram. But yeah, I'm very excited. I love it, and it's cooking and baking for people is very cathartic for me. It's how I show love. Like I said, I come from a Italian family. I've always been a food person. I love food, and sharing love in that way is just that's something that's always been a part of my life. And it's one of the ways that I show love. So I'm very excited to sort of explore it more, and we'll see how it goes. But yeah, keep a lookout on the Instagrams, and maybe if you guys see any little treats you like for those that are stateside, sorry, but if
I
anyone
know
from the States is listening, let me know. For everybody else over the pond, maybe you just want to look, you can go on the
Yeah.
Instagram. There's a lot of there's a lot of things on there. So
Will you make your own? Because I used to make mat loads of stuff, but I never really ate any of it myself. Would you make something for yourself post show as a little treat, or how are you with that? Because sometimes you can make it
yeah.
and not eat it.
So I'll be honest, I have like never tasted my cooking or my baking, like ever. But because this year I really have like grown really confident in it, and enough people have, like I said, have enjoyed it and said something to me. I do think the other good thing about making your own like little post show special treats that I can completely control what's in it.
Of course.
So that's another reason. So I never have before, but I do think this year that I'm gonna do that because I can control the portion sizes, I can control the ingredients that's going into it, I can make sure it's not something that's gonna mess up my belly, and I'm just excited to try it. Are you kidding me? I mean, who knows? Apparently, it's pretty good. We'll find out. I don't know.
I love it. It is as well. It's like I said, I would include things. I feel like again the gratitude of you can have that with like a protein shake or some fruit or you can make like an exciting, memorable experience rather than like, oh my God, I've eaten so much. I feel like absolutely there. And the thing is, it tastes nice at the time because the hunger hormones are tanked. You've done a prep and everything, and then after, I'm sure you've had it. The Ethiopian belly, and you're like,
Yep,
God, I don't.
just feels like crap. And then you get like the sugar shakes, sugar headaches. Yeah, it's just not worth it. You gotta listen. You gotta fall on your face a couple times to truly never do it again. But
Yeah.
I do think that being much more controlled this year, and making the other thing is like just making it for yourself. Like there's something very like rewarding in that too. So yeah,
What
I'm
what what
excited.
flavor will it be? Do you know?
Peanut butter.
Oh, if I could
Anything
like
with peanut
you
butter.
anymore, if I could like you anymore. I saw the Reese's and the bits and bobs in your stories before prep, and of course, guys, if you're a peanut butter lover, give Nicole a follow. I'll put your Instagram in the episode description, and then of course we'll keep an eye out for your baking company. But thank you for coming on. It's been super cool. It's flown by.
I know. I literally was just looking at the clock. I was like, "What the heck?" Thank you so much for having me. Though truly, I really appreciate it. I love coming on here, and yeah, it's been so much fun. Thank you so much.
maybe we could do one after your season as you sort of go through the reverse out in the off season because the listeners now know a bit more about you and we've spoken about what the plans might look like and it'd be good to actually, in actuality how it goes. That would be super cool. So of course we're keeping contact and we could maybe do that.
Absolutely, I would love to. Sounds awesome. Thank you so much.
Enjoy the hunger, Nicole, and I'll speak to you soon.
See ya. Have a good one.